Hello students, so today we are going to explore the counselling skills needed to deliver counselling in a remote environment. Last week we explored the virtual school counselling, and this week we are going to examine best practices for providing counselling in an online setting. As counsellors, we are the most important tool in the counselling process. We are trained to pick up on clients' verbal and non-verbal cues and engage clients in the therapeutic process. In an online environment, however, particular text-based mediums, counsellors cannot access the non-verbal information that constitute an important component of communication. The purpose of this PowerPoint is therefore to A, review the ascent of online counselling and different methods of online counselling, 2, identify the pros and cons of online counselling, and 3, understand best practices of establishing a therapeutic environment online. So, to provide an historical overview, the use of the internet has increased at a staggering pace in the United States. In the year 2000, only 40% of US households accessed the internet. By contrast, in 2015, 73% had broadband internet access. Access to information at our fingertips has also changed how we consume health information. Think about it, how many times have you Googled symptoms of mental or physical health ailments? And to a certain extent, that's changed the type of consumer who access mental health care. Many times they want instant answers, instant fixes, and may not be ready to commit to long-term therapy. And so national population surveys estimate that more than 60% of the US households use the information for information related to entertainment, communication, and health information. Recognizing the power of this forum, counsellors have begun to use the internet as a resource to provide online counselling services. This turn to the web, so to speak, for answers about healthcare comes at a time of ever-increasing healthcare costs. And there is some evidence to suggest that online counselling may be more economical than face-to-face counselling. Given these forces, professional counsellors from all fields are compelled to consider how to adapt their skill set to an online environment. So, although online counselling is a relatively new discipline, the National Board for Certified Counsellors were the first board to recognise the potentially profound impact of the internet on the counselling field. And so in 1997, they adopted the standards for web-based counselling. NBCC has also created a certification for online counselling, and if you're interested, you can review criteria for this certification on the NBCC website. NBC standards more recently were updated in 2016, and under the new standards, the term Internet Counselling was displaced for Distance Professional Services. The standards are not actually included in this as a document in this module 2. This policy expands the terminology to include other types of professional services, such as counselling, supervision, consultation, and education. And to contrast differences, it is worth noting the definition between face-to-face and distance professional services. So NBCC defined face-to-face, often called F2F, as services that involve synchronous interaction between an individual or groups of people using what is seen and heard in person to communicate. By contrast, distant professional services are defined as services that involve the use of electronic or other means, e.g. telephone or computers, to provide services such as counselling, supervision, consultation, or education. So as the term distance professional service denotes, it implies a variety of service methods. In this slide, we'll review these differences. In general, distance professional services may differ considerably because A, a significant time may elapse between responses, and B, sessions may occur via synchronous or asynchronous channels. The telephone is perhaps the oldest and most widely used form of distance professional counselling. Telephone services refers to the synchronous distance interaction in which information is received through audio means. Email refers to asynchronous distance interaction in which information is received through written text-based or email. With this form of communication, there may be time lapse in between responses. And so while email may be more convenient, obviously this can present issues related to crisis response. Chat room refers to synchronous distance interaction in which information is received through written messages. Since chat room takes place in real time, counsellors can be more responsive to crisis situations, yet counsellors need to possess excellent typing and communication skills to participate in this type of forum. Video conferences refers to synchronous distance interaction in which information is received via video and audio-based methods. Platforms such as Google Hangouts, BlueJeans, Adobe Connect are eliminating some of the barriers to accessing clients' non-verbal behaviours. And since counsellor and client can actually see one another, they can respond in real time to what is both seen and heard. Finally, social network-based refers to synchronous or asynchronous distance interaction in which information is exchanged via social network mechanisms. Some of you may have joined an online social network group for school counsellors in last week's module. So let's review some of the salient advantages associated with distance professional services. Obviously, distance services is a medium that permits more flexible service delivery in relation to time and physical location. It's more responsive to those with time constraints and those who live in remote, particularly rural areas. Online counselling may also be more affordable, and in an era of rising healthcare costs, this eliminates another barrier to access. Distance services are also more accessible for physically disabled clients. The written word is also seen to offer therapeutic advantages. For example, the art of writing has the advantages of enhancing client self-reflection, and the written word can be more powerful than words. For those of us who like to journal, text-based therapy offers a medium to more freely express ourselves. A written record of client-counsellor communication also allows clients to reread, rehearse, and reinforce solutions and resolutions. Sadly, there's also still a stigma associated with face-to-face clients, and the anonymity of online counselling may be preferable to many clients who wouldn't otherwise seek help. Think about your students in practicum and internship. Many of them are hesitant to actually physically walk into the counsellor's office, but they're probably perfectly comfortable to have an email exchange with you. So alongside the merits of distance professional counselling services, there are also several disadvantages that have in many respects really curbed the development of the field. As counsellors, you've been trained in attending behaviours and to read your clients' verbal and non-verbal cues to help them in the counselling process. Without being able to observe your client's body language, counsellors can actually misinterpret clients' words or writing. As mentioned, counsellors may be less able to respond to crisis situations, particularly if the services are asynchronous, as is the case of email. Remote services are not suitable for clients experiencing significant psychiatric conditions, particularly psychosis. Clients with personality disorder or those experiencing suicidal ideation are not good candidates for online therapy. Although assessment is supposed to be an integral component of the process and clients should be assessed to determine the area of need at the outset, remote services can be difficult from a diagnostic point of view. First, high-quality assessment makes note of clients' effective presentation and body language when you're looking at all the data sources. Second, counsellors cannot guarantee the client is the individual completing the assessment. This problem speaks to a bigger problem of security in online environments. For example, who is the individual the counsellor is in communication with? People are not always who they say they are. Also, we can't guarantee that clients' email is secure and will not be read by others. Think about our .edu emails. In many states, they are considered public record. For example, when I was in Memphis, the student paper actually published email correspondences between the English professors. So while written communication appeals to many clients who prefer to express themselves through words, email and chat therapy may not be sensitive to multicultural dynamics. The way we express ourselves through words is culturally informed and opens up possibilities for counsellors to misread clients. For example, as a person from England, the way I express myself in writing is different from perhaps an American, even though I've been in the United States for 20 years. So in the upcoming slide, we'll look at web-based language. This has evolved over recent years, and it's not uncommon for people to communicate with emojis and abbreviated language. As counsellors, we need to adapt to a client's preferred means of communication, so we can't insist that they use standard English and use grammar. In many ways, the students will be working within schools and more comfortable with web-based language when communicating remotely. And it's incumbent on us to tune in and leverage their preferred mode of written expression. Finally, counselling is only suitable to counsellors with excellent written skills and the tech savvy, and this precludes highly skilled and experienced counsellors who are not comfortable with these mediums. For example, counsellors who are top-tier therapists, but her typing skills are slow, they're not going to be comfortable working in an online environment, but at the same time, that's going to be a disservice to all the clients who could benefit from their excellent service and expertise. So let's briefly look at some counsellor characteristics that fit well in an online environment. As mentioned, counsellors should be proficient typists with good computer and written language skills. In addition to good technical language skills, counsellors should have a strong emotional communicative vocabulary and be skilled in accurately identifying clients' emotions and attributing a word to their internal experience, particularly if clients are not good at verbalising their emotions. Finally, counsellors should be flexible, especially in regard to their preferred modality. For example, a counsellor's tried and true approach may not work well online, therefore they should be open to modifying their approach. Further, the research is still emerging in terms of counselling modalities that produce optimum outcomes. As we learn more information of what works for whom and under what conditions, we will have to evolve our skill set. While available research does support the provision of distance professional counselling services, certain therapies have been found to translate better to an online environment. In this section, we'll explore orientations suitable to chat and email therapy that use a written word as the medium of therapy. And while it sounds redundant, therapies that use the written words as an integral part of face-to-face therapy tend to lend well to an online adaptation. REBT and CBT, for example, are excellent approaches to challenge clients' erroneous beliefs through written word. And if you read Chapter 9 of the Counselling Handbook, that really goes into more depth about how REBT approaches can be used to kind of challenge some of our clients' faulty thinking. Bibliotherapy too can work well online, particularly interactive journaling, where the clients respond to a prompt and the counsellors reflect on the client's writing and provide feedback. Psychoeducational techniques also work well for clients focusing on a discrete issue or working on building a specific skill. In this case, a client's issue is addressed through skill training, links, and reading material. Motivational interviewing is very promising for online adaptation. MI uses reflective communication techniques that translate to text-based therapy. Through MI, a counsellor can express empathy, demonstrate core conditions, yet move clients towards change through using change-based language. So given the limitations of email and chat therapy, the informed consent process should clearly outline the pros and cons of remote therapy, as well as outline the nature of counselling and what clients can gain from therapy, particularly if these are clients who have used the web to access mental health information. And as I mentioned earlier, they may not really understand that there's no quick fixes in some instances. Clients should use assessment in the same, so counsellors should also use assessment in the same manner as face-to-face assessment. And while it's outside the purview of this presentation, the type of assessment administered will be contingent on the purpose of therapy and the client's presenting issues. Some authors have discussed the use of contracting in chat and email therapy in addition to the informed consent thought process. These are very useful for outlining the structure of online therapy and underlining the fact that the counsellor is not on tap 24/7. With this in mind, contracts should contain information related to the frequency and length of email, how quickly the therapist responds if using asynchronous, to what extent brief emails can be exchanged without charging for services. The following slides provides an example of a contract and can be found in the chapter provided in this week's module from the Handbook of Online Counselling. And I'll just give you a minute to read over that, and it's also available in the PowerPoint, which is included with this week's module. So engaging clients in chat and email therapy, structuring the correspondence. So research has found that online chat and email therapy occurs at a much slower pace than face-to-face therapy. Nonetheless, client engagement is critical to successful outcomes. The main difference between online synchronous and traditional counselling is it takes place in written form, and there may be less time available for small talk. Email and chat correspondences therefore should be focused and direct. Even the subject line should distinguish the correspondence from the client's other emails. Recommendations include using empathic humour or a heartfelt expression of concern. The opening paragraph should summarise the nature of the work thus far, reiterate client goals, and set a focus for the current session. The following slide is an example of a sessional contract, which once again can provide focus to the session as well as establishing boundaries for what is appropriate use of time. And as I mentioned, similar to the other slide, this slide is uploaded to Canvas, and I encourage you to kind of look over it at your convenience. So email and chat therapy are the language of online communication. In online counselling, both therapists and counsellors spend more time responding to one another. From a therapeutic perspective, the client has less opportunity to avoid counsellors' questions and reflections. And in this way, you may make use of pausing as you wait for a client to actually consider the impact of your reflection or perhaps your confrontation or your gentle confrontation, and give your client a chance to respond. There's really no avoiding words in the same way that they could avoid a comment. Therefore, counsellors should really make what they write count. As mentioned, counsellors must adapt to the language of online communication and learn to express their emotions and experience and own internal experience precisely. This in turn will assist their clients to do the same. For example, counsellors should express their feelings and use symbols to differentiate their non-verbal communication from verbal. So, for example, putting like asterisks, double asterisks around feeding words. Counsellors must become familiar with the languages that evolved in tandem with the World Wide Web. Common terms used can be found at sites such as NetLingo Online, which is included in this webinar. Counsellors need to familiarise themselves with common and popular online abbreviations such as LOL, RTFL, which is rolling on the floor laughing. So you see, once again, I'm not as familiar with these as I should be. But as I mentioned, because our clients, particularly our K-12 population, are going to be very familiar with these abbreviations, we can't, if we compel them to use standard English, it's going to impair the therapeutic environment. So it's the responsibility that's on us to learn the abbreviations. So establishing a therapeutic environment kind of continued. In addition to expressing their own verbal and non-verbal communication through text, counsellors can do other things to enhance the therapeutic environment online. Email and chat-based sessions cover less content material. As mentioned, counsellors should be cogent in their choice of words. Moreover, they should avoid asking a series of questions, as this will just feel like an interrogation. Researchers have found that reflective responses are more effective than questions. Once again, motivational interviewing is an excellent modality for conveying support, yet moving clients towards change. And as more research comes out about the outcomes of online therapy, I'll be curious to see how many counsellors are actually using MI. As mentioned earlier, sessional contracting provides additional structure to the session. This can be supported by the counsellor reminding the client that their session is coming to close at least 15 minutes prior to the end of the session. So really providing the structure in addition to the counselling language or the online language which conveys empathy and support for clients. So this concludes this week's webinar. All of these recommendations for best practices are further discussed or further outlined in Chapter 9 of the Handbook for Online Counselling and the articles entitled Considerations and Strategies for Online Counselling.